Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. Something was off about the family dog. Pixie has been a family dog for over 8 years now. Ever since the day we found her as a puppy on the side of the road. She's been treated like a pampered princess. Now that she's in her later years, she gets all the treats and new toys she could possibly want. Just a few months ago, I moved out of my childhood home to go spread my wings and finally live it all on my own. Well, almost. Of course I had to bring Pixie with me. My life wouldn't be quite the same without her, and her wet nose sniffing at my face in the mornings. She was acting different, though. Not necessarily in a negative way, but still different. She took up a new hobby, which involved sprinting at top speed to the halls of the new house and playing with more aggression than she ever did in the past. Pixie was never an aggressive dog. She always knew when to take it down a notch and be gentler when she was playing with others. Part of me thought that maybe it was a new house and that she just needed more time to adjust. But I also had that creeping thought in the back of my mind that something was very wrong. I knew that in some cases, when someone was nearing their final days, they would get a burst of energy as if they had miraculously become young again, like their joints no longer hurt and their energy had been replenished. I decided to bring her to the vet to get her checked out, just to be sure that she was still healthy. After the veterinarian checked my dog, she told me that nothing was wrong with her. Pixie was healthy. All of her labs came back perfect, and as far as they could tell, she was all in the clear. Following Pixie's checkup, there were many sleepless nights. It seemed that after we got back, her energy levels and aggression only increased. More and more items would disappear and turn up again completely ruined with teeth marks. My lack of sleep was beginning to eat at me, and I'd occasionally see something lingering at the edge of my peripheral vision. I knew that this was only due to the human brain filling in the spaces, so I didn't feel frightened. I knew I desperately needed more sleep, but even when trying to take quick naps, Pixie would always run through the house or jump up on me, licking my face. I knew that if I wasn't going to be able to get some rest that night, then I needed to at least get some fresh air. So that's what I did. I drove out to the pet store, walked around the aisles a bit, and selected a new toy for her, one that she most certainly wouldn't be able to chew through. With the tough animal-shaped toy in hand, I went to the front checkout to pay. After I left the shop, I stood in the parking lot next to my car for a moment. The crisp night air felt good against my face. Finally being away from the constant racket of my rowdy dog was like a breath of fresh air. As I sat down into the driver's side, what was once a feeling of peace slowly slipped away into a feeling of unfamiliar dread. The hairs on my arms stood up and the palms of my hands became clammy. My eyes began darting around the empty parking lot. Why was I feeling this way? Was this an anxiety attack of some sort, or was it just my severe lack of sleep catching up to me? I placed my hand on my chest and focused on taking deep breaths until I could feel my heartbeat slow. I let out a sigh and lifted my head with my eyes closed. My eyes slowly opened again, and I stared up at the ceiling of the car for a moment before focusing my attention back to the parking lot in front of me. The blood suddenly drained from my face. Staring right back at me, just inches from my windshield, were two animalistic eyes set deeply in an unnaturally warped face. A scream erupted from my lungs as the creature suddenly vanished. It was like it was never there to begin with. My chest moved rapidly up and down as I gasped for air. Nothing could have possibly run away in such a tiny amount of time. I knew that for sure. It was like a nightmare. I placed my face in my hands and roughly rubbed my eyes. I needed sleep, badly. I admit, I probably shouldn't have been driving in my panicked and sleep-deprived state, but I made it back home safely. I think I had finally reached my breaking point, because the moment I got home, I just turned off the lights and fell fast asleep on the living room couch. There was a crinkling sound. It was faint, but it was still enough to wake me up. I slowly got up and grabbed my phone, turning on its flashlight. Again, my heart raced. Cautiously, I walked through the house, trying my best to avoid creaky floorboards. As I reached the open door to my bedroom, I aimed my light into the darkness. My light landed on the new toy I had bought for Pixie. I guess she helped herself to it while I fell asleep on the couch, and she definitely did a number on it. Shredded pieces of fabric and rope laid strewn about the bedroom floor. White stuffing was absolutely everywhere. I had no idea how she could have mauled a durable toy in such little time, but my main concern were the stains. Along the edges of the torn fabric was unnaturally thick saliva. Upon closer inspection, the saliva seemed to be mixed with a red, stringy substance. Blood. Immediately, I began searching for Pixie. I worried that she had somehow managed to hurt herself while tearing through the tough material. Frantically rushing through the hall and turning into the living room again, there I saw her. She stood there innocently and undisturbed. I pulled her lips back gently with my fingers, examining her gums. When I didn't find any sign of injury there, I moved on to the rest of her body. She was perfectly okay without a single drop of blood on her. I let out a sigh of relief and made my way back to the bedroom. Calling her to follow me in, I was too tired to care about the mess of scraps on the floor. The bed creaked as I fell face first onto my pillow. I let out a groan of frustration as I tugged at my blanket, which was obviously too small for my new bed. I gave up trying to adjust my blanket and just laid there face down until I drifted off into a calm sleep. As my leg hung off the side of the bed, a warm sensation spread across my skin, half waking me up. Without moving, I let out a soft grunt and began drifting back into sleep. A few moments later, the sensation moved down to my ankle. "Pixie," I said with annoyance into my pillow. The slimy feeling continued to the bottom of my foot, where uneven breaths lingered. "Pixie." "Stop that dash." My words trailed off as I looked up to see her curled up and quivering next to my pillow. My heart dropped, and I slowly turned my head to look behind me. There it was. The same creature that had been on the front of my car now sat hunched by the bottom of my bed, staring right into my soul. Only this time, I got a better look as it morphed from a dog to some kind of inhuman creature. Its eyes seemed almost too small for its head. Matted and patchy fur covered its humanoid face, and it grinned with dog-like teeth in a way that almost seemed painful. Air loosely leaked from its throat, seemingly mocking a panting dog. Shooting up from the bed, I grabbed Pixie in my arms and threw myself out of the room. I ran with all my might to the back door and slammed it open. There was a police station just on the other side of a small, wooded area, and that was my goal. My legs burned like fire as I hauled my dog with me through the trees. Quick quadrupedal footsteps staggered behind us, and I knew that if I looked back, neither of us would survive. Adrenaline whipped through my body as aggressive snarling followed close behind. We were almost there, just 50 more steps, 20 more, 10, 5, 3, 2. My shoulder slammed into the front doors of the police station. They were locked. I screamed for help with everything I had in my lungs. My whole body shook wildly with each desperate attempt to be heard. Suddenly, the door forcefully shoved open, and officers pulled us into the building. Doors slammed behind us, and I whipped my head around to look out the windows. Pixie shook with fear on the tile floor, tail between her legs. There was nothing. Outside, everything was impossibly still. The creature was gone, and all that was left was the ominous darkness that seemed to be seeping from the woods. Story 2. The Thing in the Darkness. Rain had been coming down all day like it was on a mission. Heavy raindrops slammed against the windows in waves, and the sky outside was a smear of gray and dark slate. It was the kind of day that makes you feel sorry for the people who have to go outside. Luckily, I had the whole day off. No work, no responsibilities, just a quiet, but Saturday in my 2-bedroom house near the edge of town. The kind of place where the neighbors wave but rarely talk. I had planned a lazy day, video games, junk food, and a movie night with friends. At around 4, Dave and Sarah arrived. Old high school friends. The three of us have been inseparable once. But life has a way of getting in the way. Still, tonight felt like the old days. The storm picked up around 5. The wind had a voice now, high-pitched and shrieking, and the trees looked like they were bowing to each other. Thunder rolled in long, slow waves, and lightning flickered like faulty fluorescent lights. We made dinner, frozen pizza and microwave popcorn, gourmet style, and then queued up some 80s slasher movie Sarah picked. One of those films where the killer is always just behind the door, and no one ever thinks to run for the car. We turned off all the lights. The storm made it perfect. We spent the next 2 hours sunk into the couch, the thunder doing half the jump scares for the movie. But the strange stuff did not start until after. It was close to 10 when Dave started dozing off, his head bobbing like a rag doll. Sarah was scrolling TikTok, the pale blue light from her phone making her look ghostly. I got up to stretch, my spine cracking like dry wood. That is when I saw it. Just a flicker. Something dark moving down the hallway near the baseboards. Fast, like a shadow slipping away the moment I looked. I froze. Did you guys see that? I asked, my voice a little too sharp for quietness a moment. Dave mumbled, not quite awake. Sarah glanced up and looked a little irritated. See what? I walked slowly toward the hallway. Nothing there. Must have been the lightning. I muttered. Or the movie. Uh-huh, Sarah said, her eyes returning to her phone. Back in the kitchen, I stared out the window while the tap filled my water glass. The trees were whirling in the wind, the roads practically rivers. We do not get many storms like this around here, but tonight's storm was in rare form. I sat back down. The movie had ended, but the mood had not lifted. The room felt off, like it had grown smaller somehow. Then I saw it again. Behind the TV this time, something moving. Not big, but not small enough to ignore. Just a blink of motion, like someone peeking around the edge of the entertainment center and pulling back before I could focus. Did you see that? I snapped, pointing. Sarah jumped, dropping her phone. What the hell, dude? She said angrily. Behind the TV, something moved. I said, hoping I did not sound crazy. I didn't see anything, Sarah replied, looking annoyed. Dave stirred. What's going on? Nothing, I lied. Just thought I saw something. Sarah gave me a look, the kind that says, you're creeping me out, and not in a fun way. Dave then looked at Sarah. Is he freaking out from the movie? Sarah giggled. I think so. After about an hour of yawns and waning conversation, Dave got a second wind and decided to watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I have the remote, he said, to rule all remotes. Sarah said there was no way she could stay up that long after working all day, so she called it a night and went upstairs to the guest room. Instead of going to bed, I headed upstairs for a shower, hoping the hot water might quiet my nerves. But I could not shake the feeling that something was watching me, the way you know someone is standing behind you, even if you cannot see them. Then came the sound. A bang. No, a crash, loud enough to rattle the lights in the bathroom, loud enough to vibrate through my skull. A violent sound, like someone had taken a sledgehammer to a wall. I shut off the water immediately. The house was silent now, awfully silent. No creaks, no wind. I heard Dave turn off the TV downstairs. And then, just that heavy, awful nothing. I opened the door to find Sarah already in the hallway, her hair mussed, eyes wide, too scared even for her typical sarcastic comment. You heard that? I asked. She nodded but did not speak. We crept downstairs. No jokes, no banter, just silence and the thud of our footsteps on the hardwood. Dave met us at the bottom of the stairs, pale and pointing to the back of the house, acting like he had something to say, but not able to find the words. The back door was open, not just open, destroyed, hanging by one hinge. The wood around the frame was splintered, like something huge had just burst through. We stared at it for a long time. Then we ran. Upstairs. Bathroom. Door locked. I called 911 with shaking fingers. Told them someone had broken in, was maybe still inside. The cops arrived fast, flashing lights reflecting against the rain-slick streets. They swept the house. Nothing. No footprints. No mud. No sign of forced entry, except the door. One of the officers, a young guy with a buzz cut and too many tattoos, studied it closely. "This didn't break inward," he said slowly, pointing to the pieces of the frame scattered on the back porch. "This door was busted out from the inside, like someone slammed into it open hard enough to rip out the frame. But we were inside the whole time," Sarah said. The cop gave us a look. Not suspicious, not accusing, just unsettled. "You're sure you didn't do this?" "No," I said. "We locked that door when the storm started. I know we did." He nodded and stepped back. "Then whatever was in here, it didn't come in from outside. They left much quicker than we wanted them to. We did not sleep. We stayed in that uncomfortable bathroom until sunrise. We would have left right after the police if there had not been an active tornado watch for this part of the city. I have not felt right in the house since. Sarah will not come over anymore. Dave will, but he clearly prefers to meet anywhere else. Whatever I saw, whatever was in here, it did not break in. It was already here, waiting, watching. And when it realized we were not going to bed, it left, but not quietly. It left like something disappointed, frustrated, like it had waited all night and we ruined it. That is what keeps me up at night. Not that it got in, but that it had planned to stay if we'd all fallen asleep. And next time, it might not be so patient. Story 3. What stalks the apartment roofs at night? I live in an apartment building of 7 floors, on the 6th floor, and in our vicinity are other apartment buildings ranging from 5 to 9 stories. All the buildings are made of reinforced concrete and are thusly very sturdy and mostly noise-proof. My apartment is spacious but not huge. It, like all the floors above and below, has a pretty large balcony, over 3 meters in length. But instead of a solid wall separating, it's instead a glass wall with a door that has handles on both sides. These descriptions will be relevant later on. This whole thing started about a few weeks ago. I hadn't really pieced that together until later, when I was thinking more about it and trying to remember. It started simple. I think I woke up because I really needed to go to the bathroom, but maybe it was because of the noise, and my bladder was just accidentally full. Strangely, it sounded like tapping or knocking against my blinder behind a glass wall. I like to keep them down for some privacy, as the wall revealed a whole the living room. A raven probably trying to catch a spider on the blinders, or something, I figured, and sure enough, when I clicked the lights on, it stopped, even though there is no direct sight into the bedroom from the balcony or the living room. And so I went about my night. My upstairs neighbors were the worst. Easily the worst thing about the apartment. They were a couple who, instead of going out to party, would host a party even if they invited no one else. And you'd think it'd be just the weekends, but no. Tuesday nights, as well going well into Wednesday dusk. Worst of all, they kept their music low enough to evade anyone else being annoyed by it, just me. And of course, the dancing would just be jumping on my head. Bah, I tried talking to them, but it seemed to have no real impact. They would really sweetly say they really liked dancing and having fun and promise to keep it down only to go back to it the next week. Despite this really nice and sweet outward appearance, I knew they had some troubles. Sometimes instead of the music and the dancing, they would argue and yell and scream at each other a few times. I think things were thrown. Then about 2 weeks ago, they put on Lady Gaga, Just Dance, and I listened to it while it played. I really love that song. Afterwards, I put on my headphones to a YouTube video I was watching. It seems it was going to be one of those Fridays. Some half an hour later, through my headphones, I hear loud glass shattering. For a few brief moments, I pull them off and hear the woman's muffled voice yelling something and the man scream back. I rolled my eyes and just put my headphones back on. It was a double whammy of a day, both partying and fighting. Over the next week, I had noticed that I didn't meet either of them in the lift or coming or going out of the building. And I frequently left to go to the office for work and for my evening walks around the neighborhood. I felt a pang of guilt. Maybe I should have reported their fights. But even if someone was seriously injured, I thought there was no way both of them were. Finally, I decided to check up on them. I had knocked on their door and rang the doorbell. I could barely make out scurrying. almost like running mainly, because it seemed like it was through clutter. I didn't recall ever hearing any clutter downstairs, but maybe because of the thick concrete, the sound was just too muted to reach me. As I turned to walk down the stairs back, the lift pinged, and out came someone from the same floor. We greeted, and they briefly mentioned not seeing in the last few days. After a few days, I was getting into bed, and I looked out my window. At first, my blood ran cold. It had to have been the first instinct of seeing things move in the dark. I thought to myself then, I saw someone run across the roof of one of the taller buildings. Probably some teenagers or something who got a hold of the roof keys. I told myself and calmed down. Then the next day, I caught the figure on another one of the taller buildings. They were quickly turning their head looking around. For a brief moment, I think they looked over to me and I could see a flash in their eyes. My heart once again jumped. It raced. But clearly it was a guy on the roof looking around. I had to calm down. I lowered my bedroom blinders and went to sleep. Sleep hardly came, but eventually it did. Finally, a few days ago, I'm scrolling my phone, unable to fall asleep. And yes, it's a bad habit I should get out of bed until I feel sleepy, but I just didn't have the energy. As I was just scrolling social media with no sound, I hear something that resembled wing flaps. Once again, my heart started racing, but I took a few deep breaths. Obviously, it was some bird or bat flying nearby. Calm down. A few more minutes pass, and I get distracted by my social media again, until I hear the latch on the glass door move open, which pulls the door up on its hinges, creating a very distinct and otherwise cool sound. But there's no cool sound when it's the latch that opens the door from the outside on the 6th floor. I take a deep breath, my eyes wide. If anything walks in from the balcony, and I was unlucky, it could spot me in 15 seconds. If it runs, I'm a dead man. The feeling of fear was paralyzing, and it felt like a lifetime. Yet I heard the latch finally be fully pressed, so only a few seconds at most have passed. I swallowed a big gulp and taken another deep breath. I quickly stretched out my leg onto the floor, followed by the other. I thought, maybe if I get under the bed, I'd be safe. In hindsight, a dumb thing, but it was my gut instinct at the time. Like what unhinged serial killer wouldn't look under the bed. When the glass doors were open and had hit the wall gently, I remember the walking footsteps so clearly as if I was hearing them now. The most accurate description is of a dog with long claws walking on the floors, and you could hear those clinks, or a cat running with its claws out, just much less hectic. My bed was in the corner of the room, so I pulled completely back to the wall and curled up. I don't think the thing was searching for long before it finally came into view, or at least its feet, but it felt like literal days had passed. The legs were frightening, they weren't human. They seemed like large crow's feet, the talons clicking against the floor with each step, and to both the left and right of the feet seemed to be the tail ends of wings with night black feathers. Apart from the talons clicking on the floor, with each step the room sounded dead silent. It lingered in the room, I assumed looking around as it would move, then pause and move again. Finally, it moved back out of the living room. It checked the kitchen and bathroom before it finally did another full sweep of the apartment. As its final search seemed to yield no results, it gave a slight warble and a few clicks. If I didn't know any better, I'd say it sounded sad. I stayed under the bed the next morning, until 13 the next day, quiet as a mouse and looking around, listening. Finally, I figured that I should do something. I crawled out. Slowly I made my way around, making sure to check every corner. I was faced with the open balcony doors, and I was ready to close them and lower the blinders over them, but then I hear tapping. It reminded me of the night a few weeks ago, although this time it was against concrete, upstairs. I took another big gulp and decided against doing anything that would make noise. I got dressed in whatever I could find and left the building. I got into my car and called my friend to stay over. My trusty car got me over my friend, and I was finally feeling relaxed and safe. They had to go run out to the market to get something. I crashed on the couch, watching some series. When I looked out, I saw it again, the eyes. The glowing eyes. Googling it, apparently glowing eyes are feature predators who hunt in the night, and thus need superior night vision, which isn't humans. I am now hiding in the closet. I can hear tapping on the windows from time to time, and it's just the same as that first night. My friend should be back in the store soon, and I've been texting them not to come back, but they think I'm playing an elaborate prank. I fear we both might not make the night. Story 4. Feed. Yet another freezing morning. Well, I assume it is. In here, it's a perfect 21 degrees Celsius. Out there, it's around minus 10 degrees at the most. Always. I make my way down to the canteen. There are already some people there. I'm always the last one. I don't know why. I wasn't like this at the beginning, but these days there is zero motivation left in me. The same terrible coffee every morning. The same terrible Daniel every morning. I put up with it all for nothing. Without much excitement, I walk to my post to start my day. Eve and Raul are already there. I can already hear Raul in my head. Working only half a day, huh? Working only half a day, huh? Raul greets me. Ugh. If I could hop in a car, I'd drive home right now. But I can't. When they sent the 6 of us here, it was pretty exciting. Something about a secret discovery. Very hush-hush. We were sent to Antarctica to investigate a discovery made by one of the satellites. Well, supposedly made by one of the satellites. 7 months have passed, and we found jack shit. You can already tell I'm done with this whole investigation. Hi, Raul. Good morning to you, too. I greet him back. Afternoon, you mean, he replies. Will it ever stop? I take a seat at my place and start staring. Staring like I have been for these past 7 months. Staring and thinking about where I wish I'd be right now. Staring at the screen that shows the view of our deep water camera. I see the same kind of fish all the time. I've even secretly started to name them. If my co-workers found out, they might think I'm crazy and throw me off the project. Maybe that's what I want after all. I keep staring. It's all the same, only the names will change. Every day, it seems we're wasting away. I shake my head and realize I have lapsed into song lyrics again. My mind can't keep tethered to this mind-numbing experience. Luckily, Eve snaps me out of it, ready for another day of spying on fish. Sometimes it feels like she is the only other normal person on this compound. I say jokingly that that's what I'm here for. Sadly, she turns back to her work, and I go back to staring at the screen in front of me. Hours go by, or is it minutes? I can never tell. When I'm sitting at my desk, I lose all concept of time. All I know is water and fish. All of a sudden, I'm shaken awake. The camera starts moving at a high speed, downwards diagonally. Raul, what the hell, man? I look up from my screen and see Raul sweating, pulling on the joystick. I'm not doing that, he says. Eve rushes over, and so do I. This is the most exciting work, has been since the second day. We rush to Raul and see he's trying to pull the observation sub in the opposite direction it's going. Raul's the first one to suggest, it must be stuck on something. I lose interest immediately. Oh, well, maybe hopefully the camera will break, and we will get to go home. It is, after all, the only one we had available. That's it, folks. Time to wrap the show up. I proclaim. Raul shatters my hopes and dreams. It stopped. No, wait, it's moving slowly now. I walk over to my screen, and the others follow. By this time, the others in the canteen down the hall have heard the commotion and have rushed over. All 6 of us are standing around my desk watching. What happened? Asked Dave. Eve shushed him. I love it when she does that. Dave is our leading scientist, and what he says goes, unless Eve is around. She always knew how to put him in place. Can you hear that? She turns the volume knob all the way to the maximum. It's no use. There's never a sound down there. I mockingly and silently laughed at the engineers many times since we came here. I couldn't help but crack a smile again. It was the single most useful. Beep, 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 beep. There's a sound. We all lean and instinctively trying to hear better. I have no idea what it is. What could this beeping be, and what is making that sound? Daniel shouts out. It's Morse code. Ugh, of course Daniel knows what it is. What is it then? I ask him. He listens for a little while, and then another and another. I take my eyes off the screen and realize the others have done the same. Daniel looks like he's seen a ghost. Feed, he whimpers. I stare at him blankly. Feed what? I ask. Daniel replies, I don't know. It just says feed. We are all baffled. We stand around for a couple of hours, listening, watching, but nothing happens. Nobody lost interest, but it was no good to all stand around and do nothing. Everyone goes back to their place. Except Eve. She's still at my desk watching and listening. I don't mind that she stays. We both stare in silence, and yet again my mind goes elsewhere. But this time it isn't a sunny beach or a nice warm cozy place with a cold drink in my hand. It is to the mission briefing 7 months ago. An unidentified flying object crashed into the Southern Ocean. Yes, hold your horses. I'm indeed talking about a UFO. We have been sent her in search of a UFO, and it was made out to be something very important and classified. As I have already made clear, for 7 whole months we hadn't found anything. We were very close on giving up hope I already had. Today was the most excitement we had during work since I could remember. Go grab some rest, Eve says to me. We've been here for hours. I take a look at the clock and realize she is right. We are way past midnight. Time has never gone faster here before. Normally I would have said something like, "Oh, Eve, no. You please go ahead, I'll stay." Or, "I don't need rest. I could do this all day." But today has really drained me. I thank her and quickly make my way to the sleeping quarters. I crash on my bed and all the questions fade away. At least a bed is nice, I think, as I thought every night since I've arrived in this place. I close my eyes. Darkness. Darkness like the ocean we have been watching for months. Darkness like the place the camera was brought. Beep, 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 beep. It still rings through my head. Feed. What do we need to feed? What do we need to feed it with? So many questions we have. Questions we can find the answer to tomorrow. Today is not like just some other freezing morning. I make my way to the canteen and find nobody there. I can already guess where everyone is. I quickly ate breakfast, and I notice it's my first breakfast without Daniel sharing his random fact of the day. With a cup of coffee in my hand, I make my way to the observation room. Again, people have gathered around my desk. What is happening? I ask, but nobody cares to look up from my screen. By that time, I notice the beeping has changed. I still don't understand anything. I take a look at Daniel, and he says to me, "Feed, come." Okay, that's creepy. Dave claps in his hands, demanding everyone's attention, and tells us to go to the conference room. We each take a seat around the table, and Robert is the first to break the silence. "So, everybody, any thoughts?" As the oldest of the group, Robert liked to think he was in charge. Dave knew he wasn't. Eve knew even better. Everyone turns their heads to me. "Neil, you have been in charge of observation. Have you ever noticed anything strange?" Dave asks. I scrape my throat before I speak. "No, never. I've stared at the screen, and I have not once in our time here seen anything like these past 2 days." He turns his head to Raul. "Any idea where the observation sub is now?" "Well, what we saw last is that the sub seemed to pass to the opening of the mouth of a dead blue whale, but it hasn't come out. It's safe to say it's still in there. Also, what up with that creepy Morse code?" He sadly addresses. I didn't want to give that part any thought. It creeped me out. I think it creeped everybody out because nobody said a word. Unfortunately, no important questions were answered during that meeting. We all return to our stations and another day passes. In my bed at night, I can't help but feel a sense of dread come over me. Feed, come. Those 2 words are scaring me. Will there be another word tomorrow? I really don't want to find out. Yet I drift away to sleep and tomorrow comes. Another perfect temperature morning, where I assume the outside is freezing like hell. Only this time it isn't perfect. It's cold inside. That is impossible. I get up and look at the little digital clock that is sitting on my desk. 2:43. Why am I awake? My alarm doesn't go off for hours. Suddenly the cold hits me hard. Was it the cold that has woken me up? I grab my parka from my closet and make my way down. I see everyone is gathered around in the canteen. "Hey, has the door been open or something?" I call out in the open. People look at me with a bewildered look on their face. Nobody speaks a word. I notice Dave and Robert are gearing up for what seems like an outdoor expedition. Suddenly I don't feel so good. There is something wrong. I notice stains on the wall. What the hell happened? As I get closer, I realize it is words that are on the wall, not just stains. I read the words and tears of pure fear and shock come out of my eyes. I clench my fist to prevent my hands from shaking. It's of no use. Who the hell wrote this? I shout. Again, I'm ignored. I get frustrated. I cannot believe this is happening. That damn Daniel pulling one of his stupid pranks again. I've had it. I've reached my limit. I am going to punch him and get sent home for fighting. I do not care anymore. I just want to go home. Then I suddenly realize it is just the 5 of us there. Daniel is nowhere to be seen. Okay, everybody. Robert and I will be back in 2 hours. Dave shouts and they go through the first safety door. I don't want to be here. I also want to go out, but I want to go out and go home, the office, anywhere but here. I realize Eve is crying. I need to comfort her. But as I'm walking toward her, I get close to the stains on the wall. It smells bad. As a doctor and scientist, I know that smell. It's the smell of blood. My body seems to be unable to move once I realize what it is. I need to be strong. I cannot panic now, not now. Leave that for later. I approach the stains and see the kitchen knife is on the floor next to the wall, sitting in a pool of blood. I am getting sick. Why? Who did this? Could it really have been Daniel? Why would he do such a thing? Both my mind and my heart was racing. I'm getting dizzy and I need to sit down. After a small moment of recollecting myself, I realize Eve is still sobbing. She needs to get out of here. With all my strength, I stand up and I walk towards her. Eve, please, come with me. I hold her by the arms and shoulders and I guide her to the bedrooms. As we are both walking away, completely in shock, I can feel the words written on the wall staring at us. It is like I have eyes in the back of my head. I can still read them. There is no questions left to ask or answer. There is no research left to be done. All that's left is to call the people back home and arrange immediate transportation. We are almost there. I can't help but look back one more time at the large letters written in blood on our wall. Feed, come now. Story 5. The Woman with Numbered Teeth. My stepmother hated me, despised me. She never said it, but hate exuded from her every expression. The scowl was immediate, a juxtaposition between disgust and hate. Strangers, even those most suspect of character, evoked nothing but kindness from her, but for me there was nothing but disdain. She hated me and I hated her. My father had died a few years back. A sudden heart attack. A man seemingly healthy, but always a minute from death. My father drank and smoked, but was active and full of vigor. His death was both expected and unexpected. I knew his lifestyle was unhealthy and dangerous, but naively, I also believed he was genetically superior to the rest of the human race. He was destined to live well into his 90s with shriveled liver and a stubborn determination to persist beyond the expectations of human physiology. To me, he was a superhero, flawed but celestial, a man who embodied greatness. He spoke his mind. He feared no one. He was the quintessential alpha male. Then he died, while shitting on the toilet, his pants down around his ankles, and his head buried in his own exposed crotch. When God humbles, he doesn't half-ass it. He doles out the humiliation in full measure. My dad loved Blue Hole Lake. He talked of it constantly. His family went there every year. His father and his father before him, every August, and every summer from the first time the lake was formed until my father ended the tradition. He never took me to the lake or the cabin he so fondly remembered. After he died, I vowed to return to the lake and reinstitute the long-neglected family tradition. Why didn't he take me? Why didn't he want to do with me what his father had done with him? Honestly, it hurt me. I put together the trip, the vacation request approved, a rare concession from my boss. I planned it for August, well in keeping with family tradition. I honored every detail. Every little nuanced description my dad willingly conveyed. I say willingly because there was a glaring omission in his fond recollections. He always stated that they stayed in the same cabin, but he never said what cabin it was, the number, nor any description. He would stop and stare into his own mind, steadfastly removed from the present, cast into a painful memory, his strength visibly drained. August was hot and unforgiving. The dark water splashed and rolled towards the beach. It was inviting and intimidating. I had rented a one-room musty cabin. I got there late on Monday evening. I was going to unpack and read myself to sleep. It was too late to have much time for swimming, but a force pushed me to do otherwise. There was a need, a compulsion to swim, an invitation to dive into the ambience of nature. I changed into my swim trunks and headed down to the lake. There was about an hour or so until the beach was closed. It closed at sunset, whenever or whatever that meant. I suspected sundown was less about the sun and more about the whims of an impatient park ranger ready to end the day. I walked slowly into the water. The warmth was uncomfortable. I expected a chill, but it felt more like dirty-ass bath water, shocking and disappointing. The heat of the water was suffocating. There was an unremitting discomfort. The beach was empty and bare. I swam to the orange barrier, the line between safety and danger. Beyond the other side was an unimaginable depth, or maybe just the recognition that this was a distance of no return, no coming back from the edge of eternity. I put my arms up and rested my back against the float, looking up towards the beach. The last of the patrons was leaving, drying off and packing up the belongings. I was the only one left. At the top of the beach, I could see the parking lot, and beyond that a patch of forest. A slender brunette in a two-piece yellow bathing suit strolled out of the forest. She carried nothing, no bag, no towel, nothing but a pompous swagger. The closer she got, the more her beauty came into focus. Everything about her was steeped in a previous era. Her bathing suit reminded me of the women I saw in black and white movies. Her hair was of an elegant movie star, short and curled in the back. She entered the water with no reservations, boldly plunging up to her chest. She slowly turned her head to acknowledge my presence and held me in her gaze. I felt exposed and pinned down, unable to cast my eyes elsewhere. She seemed significantly closer to where I was than where she had originally entered the lake. It was a transition, as if in a dream, a relocation from one point in space to another point in space with absolutely no movement. Then she submerged under the surface and disappeared. She was under longer than any human possibly could be without suffocating. Minutes passed. Time dragged. I surveyed the lake, looking in a panoramic frenzy, feeling uncomfortably close to death. She was nowhere to be seen. I feared she had drowned, gotten wrapped up in a litter of sunken debris, or her foot caught in some unintentional trap. And then, right in front of me, she emerged from the water, her eyes pale blue, without iris or pupil, marble with streaks of red. She smiled and etched in black on 3 of her top incisors with the numbers 314. She held her smile in a long, bizarre pose. The water was too deep to stand, and yet she didn't attempt to tread water. She didn't thrash about. She simply floated, perfectly still, not even affected by the wake of a passing speedboat. She wasn't subject to the laws of nature. The water obeyed her. The warm water cooled rapidly. My teeth chattered uncontrollably, my trembling breath visible in the gray air. The sun was diving fast into the deep horizon. She slowly vanished, still flashing that hideous smile with that cryptic message scrawled across her teeth. Her icy hand grabbed my ankle and pulled me under. The plunge was unexpected. I was unprepared. Water rushed through my nostrils and mouth as I breathed in, foolishly trying to scream for help. I kicked and thrashed my arms upward, trying desperately to break free. I felt her release my ankle. I shot up through the depths, further down than I had anticipated. Dim light, beautiful twinkling points of grace beckoned through the water. Freedom was close at hand, but as my hand broke the surface, she grabbed my ankle and yanked me even deeper. I heard her cruel, muffled laughter. My lungs were on fire. It was as if I had swallowed hot, thick oil. Pressure coursed through my veins. I felt the pounding of my rapidly beating heart in the temples of my head. A dizzying array of stars swam before my eyes. I then see her floating before me, her skin blue and tattered, eaten and rotted by the forces of nature. Death was consuming her, and yet, though barely visible, I saw her smiling. 314 flashed across my mind. I realized I was free from her grasp. I shot up to the surface. Oxygen extinguished the fire in my lungs. I coughed and heaved up filthy, bloody water. The coughing was uncontrollably, but so was the instinct for survival. I thrashed and coughed and thrashed. My arms were rubber, hands and feet number. I barely felt the water, but as soon as my foot touched the bottom, the sensation of sand stung my feet into action. I made my way to the shore in a clumsy combination of swimming and running, a dance of hysterics, the play between weakness and a determination to survive. I was a wounded gazelle with one last chance, a dash through the thorny shrub, but to no avail. I felt the familiar grip on my ankle. She dragged me back into the water. I turned to kick, the water shallow enough to allow free movement of my limbs. The heel of my foot glimpsed the side of her bicep. The skin was loose and sloughed off her arm. Her body had deteriorated to an even worse degree. She was a walking, waterlogged corpse. One of her eyes was missing, and the other was decayed and collapsed. Chunks of flesh were gone, chewed or decayed. Her hair was no longer elegant. What was left of it was thin and stringy. Through all of it, though, she never ceased to smile. 3-1-4. I was now fully on my back. I tried to kick again, but at the moment I went to thrust my foot forward, my whole body went limp. I was paralyzed. I lay in the shallow water, looking into the darkening sky. The water was lapping against my ears and splashing into my eyes. I felt her climb on top of my legs, crawling her way slowly up my body. She lifted her abominable face from my chest, grasped her bony hands around my shoulders, and heaved herself forward. Her face was in my face, her one good eye dripping down her cheek. The stench was vomit-inducing. I swallowed, choked, and gasped for air. "Charlie," she whispered. "Charlie?" That was my father's name. "Charlie. I'm not Charlie." She grabbed my head and planted her dead lips on mine. Bile and decay filled my mouth. It wasn't a loving embrace. Her mouth held tight. Putrid water flowed from her inner being into my throat. I felt like I was trapped in a dentist chair with dirty cotton stuck in my mouth and rigid plastic stretching my lips wide. A vision played before my mind. A beautiful woman in a two-piece yellow bathing suit with elegant hair, talking to a man eerily similar to my father, but much younger. A child on the floor. An argument. The man choking the woman. Lifeless. The man leaving with the child. Cool air rushed across my body. I heard a splash and scream. I could feel my arms and legs again. I crawled to my knees, stood up, and was about to run when I heard her whisper from behind me, "Son." I stopped and turned. My feet were still in the water. The warmth from earlier returned. Fear subsided, but sadness engulfed me. The woman was beautiful again, but she was no longer smiling. She seemed ashamed. The last light faded and her shadow dissolved into the merging line between sky and water. I had every intention of leaving that night, but I was exhausted. Sometimes fear plays itself out. You can only be haunted by ghosts for so long before it becomes routine, part of life. Besides, something had changed. That morning, I packed and got ready to leave. I had 3 days left on my reservation, but needless to say, I wasn't really in the mood to be by the lake. I did my last check of the cabin to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything. It's a ridiculous routine. I check in the bed, in the drawers, and even in the shower in case I forgot some soap or shampoo. There was an empty carton of orange juice in the refrigerator. It wasn't mine, but I didn't want the next tenant to think it was me, as if they would go through the trouble to find out which asshole had left trash in the refrigerator. As I walked out to the garbage can near the road, I noticed a cabin across the street. The little wooden sign staked out in front of the porch had etched in it the number 314. That was last August. Now a new August is fast approaching, and I've made reservations. This time I've invited my stepmother. Story 6. My daughter is seeing a man in my closet. My daughter is my pride and joy. She's 8 years old, and from the very moment she was born, she was like an angel sent down to earth, and it was my job to water and nurture her into adulthood. We have this tradition where every night just before bedtime, I'll read her a few pages out of her favorite book, watching my little girl so entranced, so encapsulated in the story. It made my heart glow with a warm light that blanketed my entire being. On this particular night, we were on chapter 12 of Charlotte's Web, and Charlotte had just rounded up all the barnyard animals. This is around the point in the story where she starts spinning messages into her webs, like some pig. Terrific. All those subliminal messages to keep the farmer from slaughtering Wilbur. My daughter had quite the little meltdown, pouting how afraid she was that Wilbur would go on to be sold and butchered. Come on, Pumpkin, I plead. Do you really think Charlotte would let that happen? Look, she's leaving notes so the farmer knows Wilbur isn't just some pig. Leaving notes like the man in your closet? She asked. I didn't know what to say to this. A man in my closet? What? Haha, yeah, silly just like the man in my closet. Finishing up, I closed the book and began to tuck my daughter in, giving her a gentle little kiss on the forehead and brushing her golden blonde hair back behind her ear. All right, sweetie, you have sweet dreams for me, okay? You too, Daddy, she cooed. Lie in bed that night. I couldn't shake the unease. Man in my closet, she said. What kind of kid fear makes her think there's something in my closet? I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I checked. I actually, ever so cautiously, made my way over to the closet before sliding the panel open to reveal nothing but darkness before me, yanking the pull string and flooding the closet with light. Everything seemed to be in order. Shoes, shirts, pants, and a crumpled sticky note tucked under the edge of the drywall. Some pig scribbled in red ink. I did everything I could to rationalize it. Maybe my daughter left it? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's part of some poorly made grocery list. I don't know. No. This couldn't be rationalized. It was too perfectly coincidental. I grabbed a bat, and I made my rounds. Hello, I shouted. Hey, if there's anyone in here, you better come out now, 'cause I'm calling the cops. I went through every room in my house and didn't find even a hint of a person. All the yelling had awoken my daughter, who was now standing at my side. What happened, Daddy? She grumbled, wiping sleep from her eyes. Nothing. Honey, let's get back to bed. Come on, it's late. Did you find the man, Daddy? I paused. What man? What man are you talking about, Roxy? Tell me now. I said sternly. The man from your closet, Daddy, I told you. Don't you remember? There's no one in the closet, Roxy. I checked already. I thought I heard something in the garage. So you didn't find a note? My blood ran cold. What do you know about a note, baby girl? I asked playfully to mask the fear. He told me he left you one. He said it was like from the story. Sitting my daughter down on her bed, I pulled the crumpled sticky note from my pocket. Are you talking about this note, sweetheart? I asked her. Yes, it's just like from the story, Daddy. Look, some pig. She laughed, clapping like she just saw a magic trick. Needless to say, we camped out in the car for the remainder of that night. The next morning, I sent Roxy off to school and began my extensive search of the house. I'm talking looking for hollows in the drywall, shining flashlights in the insulation-filled attic. Hell, I'm checking under the bathroom sink for Christ's sake. Finding nothing and feeling defeated, I plopped down on a couch for some television when the thought hit me. Roxy said he wanted to leave one for me. Could this mean that he's already left some for Roxy? I rushed to her room and began rummaging, emptying the toy bin, searching the desk and dresser. Not a note to be found. However, glancing at her bookshelf, I noticed something that I hadn't before. A thin, aged-looking composite notebook, with cracks branching across its spine and yellow pages. It wasn't the notebook that caught my attention, though. It was a flap of a bright yellow sticky note that stuck out ever so slightly from between the pages. Opening it up, what I found horrified me. Each page was completely covered in sticky notes from top to bottom and left to right, like a scrapbook of notes that, according to my daughter, came from a man in my closet. None of them were particularly malicious. In fact, it was as though they were all written by a dog that had learned to communicate. Hello, one read. Roxy, read another. Waiting, window, to D. Just single-word phrases that looked to be written by someone who was mentally challenged. Who do I even turn to for this? What would the police say if I brought them this and told them my daughter and I had been sleeping in my car because of it. They'd take Roxy away and declare me an unfit parent. That's what they do. So I just waited. I waited until Roxy got home, and I confronted her about it. Roxy, sweetie, I found this in your room today. Is there anything you want to tell me about it? Those are the notes. Dad, I told you so many times, she said, annoyed after a long day of second grade, I guess. Yes, I know that. Dear, but where'd they come from? How did that man give you these? He always leaves them for me after our stories, Daddy. It's like his thing. Leaves them where? She stared at me blankly. Ugh! Wherever I said he lives this holy time, she snarked, rolling her eyes. He's in your closet. Roxanne Edwards, is that absolutely any way to speak to your father? I snapped. Go to your room right now and fix that attitude you picked up today. Well, sorry, she croaked. It's not my fault you won't listen to me. Keep it up, young lady. And so help me, I will see to it that you stay in that bedroom all weekend. She closed her door without another word. I hate to be so hard on her, and it's not even her fault really. This whole situation has had me on edge for the last couple of days. About an hour passed, and by this time I decided that I should probably start thinking about dinner. I figured I'd get pizza as a truce for Roxy, so I called it in and started looking for a movie we could watch together. Midway through browsing, I heard giggling coming from Roxy's room. That's odd, I thought. What could possibly be so funny? Sneaking up as to not disturb whatever moment she was having. The first thing I noticed was a book in her hand. That's my girl, I whispered under my breath. I didn't raise an iPad kid. However, pride quickly dissipated when I realized that her eyes were glued to the floor by her bed frame instead of the copy of James and the Giant Peach. Hey kiddo, I chirped. Her eyes shot up from the floor to meet mine. Oh, hi Dad. What are you up to in here? I asked her. Oh, you know, she said wondrously. Just reading. Just reading, huh? I thought I just heard you laughing. Oh yeah, there was just a silly part in the book, she said distractedly. Well, are you going to tell me what it was? I chuckled. Your old man likes to laugh too, you know. Hey, I'll tell you later. I'm getting kind of sleepy. I kind of want to go to bed. Go to bed? It's only 7 o'clock. I just ordered pizza. Come on, pumpkin. I thought we could watch a movie. She answered with a long, drawn-out yawn. Okay, fine. Well, at least let me read you some more of that Charlotte's Web. I begged gently. I don't think I want a story tonight, she said, reserved and stern. No story? But I always read your story. Ah. Okay, fine. If you're that tired, I guess I'll let you have a night off. Sweet dreams, pumpkin. This finally drew a smile onto her face. You too, Dad, she said warmly before getting up to give me a big, tight hug. That night, I ate pizza alone in the living room while I watched Cops Reloaded. I finally called it a night at around 11 when my eyes began to flutter and sound began to morph into dreams. Crashing out onto my bed, I was just about to fall asleep when the faint sound of scratches made its way into my subconscious. The scribbling, carving sound of pen to paper. I shot up and rushed to the closet, swinging the door open and yanking the pull string so hard I thought it'd break. Lying on the floor in plain view were 3 sticky notes, each one containing a single word scrawled so violently it left small tears in the paper. Do not yell. That was enough for me. All the sleep exited my body at once as I raced to my daughter's room, car keys in hand. My heart sank when I found an empty room and a window left half open. I screamed my daughter's name and received no response. Weeks went by and no trace of Roxy had been found. I am a broken man. I've thought about suicide multiple times because how could I let this happen? My pride and joy, the one thing I swore to protect no matter what, taken right from under me. The only thing that stopped me is that a few nights ago, I heard scribbling from my closet, less violent this time, and more thoughtful, rhythmic strokes. Hurrying over the closet and repeating the routine once more, I was greeted with but one note this time, one that simply read in my daughter's exact handwriting. I miss you, Daddy. Story 7. Something is changing people into something new, and I think I'm next. It's watching me as I type this. The thick whiskers on its eyeless face don't twitch like they should. It is sitting perfectly still near my keyboard. By the horrible smell, I can tell it's been dead for some time. A camera that has been shoved into its tiny skull blinks with a tiny hint of red light. It knows that I know. Better if I play along for now. I don't know how long it will allow me to continue. I've never expected or wanted much from my life. Just a job that didn't take more than it gave, someone to hold at night, and a good cold beer before bed. But I saw something that stripped my soul down the bone and smothered any joy and hope I once had for this world. Now I don't sleep anymore. Not since I learned that something is snatching people in broad daylight and changing them. Try and make them better. Something new. The changed ones. They are much quieter now, and they look more like people than they used to. It's only getting better at making them, and soon we won't be able to tell them from us. A dead man warned me about what was coming. His name was Luke, and I was alone with him late into that hot summer night, while he spoke of when he was still a man. I'm writing this because I saw another one of the changed ones a few days ago when I stopped at a convenience store to grab something quick for a late dinner. As I pulled a pizza out of a freezer, an old lady shuffled up beside me and stared blankly into the glass door. The pizza I held shook as a familiar sickly smell of rotting flesh and oily components mixed with the cold freezer air that sent whips of cold fog around us. A soft whine of small servos whirred as she turned her head to me. Her eyes were bloodshot, and tears streaked down her face as she tried to smile. Her lips pulled back over her teeth, exposing black gums and congealed blood. "Please kill me," she whispered through clenched teeth. Her jaw popped and fell to the floor. A putrid gray tongue lolled down her throat, and two blinking lights flashed from the back of her throat. She was another improvement, another attempt to make us perfect. I wanted to forget what I'd seen. The creations of an inhuman mind gone insane. I dropped the pizza, shattering it on the floor as I ran. She still had vocal cords, unlike most of them. She screamed for me to run as she chased me. If I hadn't parked my car on the curb with the driver's door facing the store, I probably wouldn't be writing this. Anyway, best to start where it started. Everything changed last year when I was on night duty for the Claysville police. It was supposed to be a simple job, and it was for a while. Claysville is a very small Kentucky river town, and it has a population of just 304. Small towns are the best place for monsters to hide, things that need to learn and grow, things not yet ready for the world to see them. My night started with a typical shift change, with Gary giving me the rundown on open issues. He tossed the keys to the cruiser at me as he walked past my desk. Good luck tending to the veggie patch tonight. He laughed as he left through the door. He always said this on a full moon. It had gotten old, but still usually held true, with it being the weekend and the fact that Claysville had more bars and liquor stores and grocery. The night was certain to bring out a variety of crazies. I was sitting at my desk while tossing sunflower seeds into a styrofoam cup as the wall clock buzzed. My mind kept returning to last night's terrible date, and the sound of each seed hitting the cup grounded me to the present just enough not to spiral. I had finally gotten a date with Valerie, and when I struggled to find something to talk about, I bombed fast and hard. My desk phone lit up and shrieked as a call came in. I reached for the handset and sighed as I readied myself for my first call tonight. Domestic disturbance, car accident, or one of Gary's veggie patch crazies. It was past 2 a.m. on a Saturday, and a hot September night at that. People got wild on nights like this. It was a local farmer, and his voice cracked and broke as he told me that he shot something he thought was a man, but wasn't sure. After the call, I slid on my cap and ran to my cruiser. I should have tried the state police before going there. Everything could have been so different. I knew that Claysville's only other officer was at the other end of the county, probably face down, drunk as a skunk at Tater's bar. The old Crawford farm had one of those houses that almost everyone knew in Claysville. It's where the Our Farm Pumpkin Fest is held every year. It felt strange to be walking toward the barn, where I had played as a child during school trips. That was before I started handling druggies, speeders, and dead bodies for a living. The last dying breath of summer heat floated in the air as I approached the two figures. One standing, the other lying face down in the dirt. My fingers traced a bit of my gun as I kept my eyes on who I assumed was Jake. His hands were firmly in his pockets, exactly where they shouldn't be. Hands in the air. I'm going to need you to step back from the body. Where's your gun? He grinned nervously at me and almost tripped as I barked the order. His hand shot up, and he nodded his head to a glinting object in the dirt. A sweet rot mixed with motor oil hung heavy in the wind as I slowly approached the body. It was not a man. It was not a machine. It was something else. He wore soiled boxers and a shredded t-shirt. Chunks of flesh had been torn from the limbs, with just white bones barely holding sections of him together. A mess of black cables snaked from the back of his head and down to his lower back, where a phone had been shoved into a festering hole carved into his flesh. His legs were caked with blood and shit, leading down to a pair of untied sneakers. It was when I noticed the maggots wiggling out of the sides of the underwear that I blew chunks. The mix of smell and sight was well beyond my limit. It was worse than when Mrs. Pfeffer died in her trailer during one of the hottest weeks of the previous year. The phone embedded in the body dinged, and the limbs twitched once and hard, like the muscles of science class bullfrog when you juice them up with some AC, or something testing circuits before powering up. Another ding. The head shot up and looked right at me. It had no eyes, only empty holes. A webcam was screwed into his right shoulder. It stared at me as it blinked with a soft red light. I screamed and pulled my gun from the holster. He'd been a man in his early 20s, where he used to have flesh on his jaw. Now it was just a skeletal frame that held a black, shriveled tongue within. The phone screen lit up, and an airy voice spoke from its small speaker. "I'm recording this message," a man's voice said desperately. The man lifted an arm and slammed it down hard onto the dirt as he pulled himself toward me. Gears turned under the stretched skin of his shoulder, and motors squealed. "Don't move." My voice came out loud, but with an undercurrent that exposed my fear. The jaw clicked as it moved, and a hissing sound came out like a death rattle that sprayed maggots onto its hands. The dark eye holes that led into brain matter looked up at me again. "Fool, fuck this." Jake stammered as he turned and ran into the woods. A buzz came from the phone speaker. Message with the hopes that somebody believes. He hissed again but did not charge me. Instead, he pointed the phone on his back and wrote 0943 in the dirt. Looking back now, I know he wasn't hissing. He was trying to scream, without vocal cords. "Please believe," it said before the cables were yanked from the back of his head. He fell motionless to the ground, and the light on the webcam and phone remained on. The voice warbled out of the phone one final time. "I'm scared of what comes next. I know I won't be me for much longer." The light faded from the camera, and the phone went dark. The sound of a small weed trimmer cut through the tree line where Jake had disappeared into. I tried my radio again, but got no reply. I could try my car radio. It's possible that my portable was broken. I kept glancing back as I half ran back to my car, keeping an eye on the machine man's body that should finally be dead. The hood of my car pointed open to the moon like a distracting finger. Most of the doors were open, and a tangle of wires hung loose from where the headlights had been just 20 minutes ago. It had been stripped just like the others. There was no radio, no houses for miles. I was alone until the ambulance got here. It could be hours. I waited near the body for either Jake to come back or the ambulance to show up. The skin of my hand was beginning to feel raw as I held the gun tightly in my sweaty hand. I found myself jumping at every twig snap and rustle of leaves. This night was more than I thought my mind could handle. Biomechanical bodies, my car being stripped down, and now a growing dread that perhaps no one was coming. Or worse, that something was. I jolted and fired a shot as another ding came from the body. The phone was lit up and displayed a smiling man hugging a massive German shepherd on the lock screen. It was hard to tell the amount he had decayed, but I was pretty sure this was a dead guy. The numbers in the dirt. It might be an unlock code. He wanted me to see something on his phone. I slipped on a glove and unlocked it. It had the voice recorder app up. Something told me to walk back to my car and leave this alone, to run back to town. Anything but press play. But I was curious. So I pressed play. His name was Luke, and he first saw one of these things when he was a boy. He knew what was behind all of this and why it was doing it. I've been writing this for some time, and has been reading everything I type with an alien indifference. I think I might be safe for a little longer. Maybe not, but I'm going to take a walk. Sorry to leave you like this, but I need a break. But there's so much more to tell, and this has been a bit much to dig up. My phone is lighting up. Luke is calling me on Messenger, but he's now dead 2 times over. I know it isn't him. At least, I hope to God it isn't. Got to clear my head, and a drink might be just what I need. I'll post more later. Story 8. I think I'm melting. It's hard to say when it started. I graduated college a year ago now. Moved to a new city far from home. Started trying to do the whole grad school thing by myself. It was a lot at first. But after almost a year in, I felt like I was getting it all figured out. After my first few weeks here, though, I started feeling really off, and I don't mean mentally. I had headaches, chest pains, nausea, the whole deal. At the time, I was scheduling doctor's appointments to figure it out. I know now it was a precursor of my new condition. I was undergoing some kind of change that I didn't understand. At some point in the last 2 months, my body decided to fall apart. The first to go were my molars. You know that powdery taste that fills your mouth when the dentist drills into your teeth? That was on my tongue for 3 weeks. I was absent-mindedly smacking my lips for a month, trying to abate the calcium's tang. Completely oblivious to what was coming. It was annoying, but didn't seem dangerous at the time. I figured I could schedule another checkup once my new job's health insurance kicked in. That plan went out the window when I woke up and felt soggy clumps of teeth sloughing into the back of my half-awake throat. I shot upright, gagging and spitting. My tongue desperately fell along my teeth for cause, and stopped once it reached the right first and second molars. There was still material there, but it wasn't bone. The closest thing I can think of to describe it is a sandcastle at high tide. There was a shape, some structure, but with every second, I could feel grains of myself slipping away to be digested by my own saliva. I wasn't scared yet, just confused. I was in shock, my brain refusing to put together what was happening. The fear came when I realized I couldn't feel it. Parts of my teeth were separating from the root, and I can't feel it at all. My fingers dug into my mouth before I could tell them to, clawing for some kind of information. The only thing that came was a delicate squish, marrow spreading over my hand like warm butter. Naturally, I screamed. I screamed for a while. It took my voice giving out for me to even remember I could move. I thought of my bathroom mirror. If I could just see what I was feeling, maybe I could figure out a normal explanation. I threw myself out of bed, but didn't find a solid footing of a functional step. Instead, my calf sunk into my ankle with a muted crunch. I barely had time to register my heel's liquidation before I hit the ground. My head bounced off the floor, more sticky resin seeping from my mouth into the carpet. My eyes instinctively moved to see what had happened. My left foot was mangled. It looked like the bones of my heel had vanished, leaving nothing to stop the shin from sliding into its position. Despite the damage, my toes could still wiggle. I could feel them just as I had my entire life. Moreover, just like with my teeth, pain wouldn't come. My head throbbed from the impact of the fall, but the foot felt perfectly fine. I leaned on my bed and began to lift myself up, being careful not to put any weight on my left side. I managed to find my balance and attempted to limp toward the bathroom. I was surprised to find the foot could still support my weight if I was on my toes, but walking flat felt, I don't know, incorrect? Half sturdy limb and half waterbed, I guess. With each step, I felt whatever was left of my torso sloshing through whatever was left of muscle, creeping into the structurally sound portions of my body. Finally, I made it to the mirror. If I hadn't shouted my voice apart earlier, I would have surely lost it then. Distracted by my own disintegration, I had completely ignored the lack of sensation in my right ear, while it remained firmly attached. The shape of it draped down the side of my face. I hesitantly reached to touch it, and flinched as my fingers sunk into the deflated cartilage. My thoughts were brought back to my teeth. I leaned my head back and pulled my cheek to the side. My gums were slathered with a gritty, whitish substance. I closed my mouth tightly and sucked on my teeth in an attempt to wipe the slime away. I carefully opened up again. I prodded it where the molars had been rooted, and to my horror, the gums caved in as well. I heard it as much as I felt it. A soft, mushy squish. I didn't even have to call an ambulance. The neighbors apparently thought I was being stabbed to death with how loud I was shouting. The officers sped me to the hospital after seeing the state I was in. I spent 6 days in the emergency room. Needless to say, the doctors had the same amount of information I did. Latent genetic disorder was tossed around. I heard cancerous mutation at one point. They couldn't take a blood test because, in their words, my circulatory system had become irregularly located. They took some x-rays, but every time they would come out blurred, as if the machine itself was shaking from what it was looking at. Query after query, guess after clueless guess. They weren't able to help, but thought I was too fascinating to go unstudied. I got shipped from the ER across state lines to some specialty lab. The only possession I got to bring with me was my laptop, which would be nice if I couldn't see them jotting down notes as I typed this. That was 2 weeks ago. At that point, if I have the timeline right, my left pinky, right cheekbone, left leg up to the knee, right leg halfway up the femur, one floating rib, and 11 more of my teeth had gelatinated as they started calling it. I was already a rotten, wasting thing composed of my own dissolving matter, just waiting to pop. I couldn't imagine it getting worse. And yet here I am, much, much worse. At least I might get a condition named after me. It's hard to describe the state I'm in now. Most of my fingers still work, but the palms are affixed to lie flaccid and motionless. Did you know your shoulder blades are the only bones in your body that aren't directly joined to another? They're connected to the shoulder through flexible tendons that can stretch according to the desired movement. That's why it slides across your back freely when you move your arm. That's also why I felt them slip down my ribs. One smashed through my pelvis, which itself was already half gone. 2 days later, the other one clattered across my ribs as it fell, knocking two loose, before getting stuck in my right ass cheek and fading completely. Still no pain, just less mobility. All I'm able to do now is type. Slowly type out what's happening to me. Any day now my skull will evaporate, or maybe my vertebrae. I'm not a religious man, but when my jaw began to swing, I started praying. I think of 2 prayers when I wake up and repeat them when I go to bed. I invoke whatever creator allowed this to happen to end it as soon as possible. Second, I beg to feel some kind of pain when it happens. Any hint as to what's become of my body. Story 9. Manuka. He answered our prayers during the Dust Bowl. Our town suffered as most did in Kansas. My parents moved out here when they found out I was on the way, caught up in the great wave of folks beckoned by the cheap land. My dad staked ours, set up a shack to live in, and cleared our family's path. Not long after they found themselves a schedule. He would get up at 4 a.m. every morning, have coffee at the diner until 6, work in the fields for 12 hours, then rest. Mom did everything else. And that's how life went on, not even tripped up when I was born. The dirty 30s, however, laid us flat. It's known how the story of the Dust Bowl goes. Farmers overcultivated their lands with unhealthy practices, in the hopes they'd have enough product to compensate for the depression. Our town was no different, and in retaliation, fate dwindled our crops and gutted the yield. The plants were sad and sickly, dwarfing corn on brittle brown stalks, stingy soy and pinto beans. We seemed to harvest as much rotten produce as the salvageable stuff. The foul piles grew in multiplicity and stature. Too much at one time to prepare for composting. We prayed every lull in time we came across. On days when Dad had to come in from the field early, dust caked into every nook in his face. An involuntary moment of silence came over us. There was a storm that lasted for days, with an occasional 45 minutes until the next wave would barrel towards us. The night that it ended, it was an hour after dusk when it just fizzled away, its tirade evidenced by our half-buried porch, orange film on our windows, a ramble with neighbor's cattle fence, and him We were in the living room, a light, silent celebration of the break in the storm. That's where we felt him. It was like taking a step with no stairs to catch our foot. At the drop of a pin, something fell through us, a physical hollowing in our bodies, but also an emotional longing to fill that void. It beckoned us to look outside. The crimson moon, bloodshot from the dust-laced sky, permitted and reduced our witnessing of his only visit. The transit told of his appearance. The lighting, too inadequate to reveal greater details. What could be seen is his overzealous height, emphasis given to the too visible, spindly appendages that made up 3/4 of his body. He lumbered slowly towards us, the joints connecting the limbs to the torso judged out drastically with every step, like popping an arm in and out of its socket. His torso dipped down between the limbs for a short distance before ending at an amputated stump. The core of the torso being vase-shaped, bottle-necking, then stretching into a thin plateau. If the plateau was a head, it laid flat like a crocodile's. Structures branched out of either side, with a privity and sprawling upwards. The thick trunks closest to the body, wisping out into oblivion as its girth frittered. Moonlight shone through momentary vacancies in his body, blips of light that would flicker within his shadow, promptly filling back in. A hazy, hardly rendered web of flowing tendrils trailed off his center mass, riding along the thinning air. It could have been our bodies giving in to our mind's desire to watch, neglecting our increasing need for air, but it felt as though the room became a vacuum in his wake. The whistle of the late storm's wind as it channeled through the ill-fitted wood had long since died down, now non-existent. Nothing made a sound in his presence. He stood between our furthest fields, among the numerous and now embarrassing rot piles, a shameful representation of our inadequacies, laid out beneath him. From behind him rose 2 appendages, 2 obscure sticks, manifesting into tangible structures once they swung over his body. Their additional height now doubled his, but just for a moment, before they collapsed, buckingly halfway up, the heavy top coming down fast. They didn't meet the ground with a thud, instead a hydraulic, slow approach, long thin rods hoisted up by beams no thicker, resting on either side of the neck. The ends met our fill piles. He began to draw them in, the limbs like 2 chopsticks, squeezing toward each other. When they rose again, a wad of cultivated death was held in their grasp. It swung back over his body and disappeared behind his shadow. It's as if the moon turned down the lights as he left, obscure to the point of his form being nothing more than an afterimage. As he dwindled away, the rest of the world returned, all except for the storms. We heard the wind, gentle and whispering, the crickets, then our breath. Not a word was said that night, not out of bewilderment. It would have been unnecessary to do so. Words would be needed for someone who didn't see him. We felt our explanation. Once the spell was lifted, it felt like we had gained 50 pounds. An intense exhaustion followed. Although I don't imagine any of us slept, a part of us still watching from the window. We didn't talk at breakfast either. Our faces may have worn an expression commonplace in the 30s, but our eyes were coated with a photographic cataract, a picture of him. The first word spoken that day was from my father when his distant howler and footsteps grew louder, puttering in the dustfall that still blanketed our land. Mom and I, cleaning the grime off our porch, looked up to see a traditionally silent and unenergetic man, waving, panting, and yelling about something in the field. We took off in his direction. When we met him, his breathless gasps couldn't carry any words, so he turned and ran back the way he came. When we made it to the scene, he hunched over his knees, spitting and coughing. The sound an aging man used his body in a way he hadn't in years. His fit became an afterthought when we made sense of the display. Where a graveyard of rotten plants stood days before, no longer had a trace of the useless matter. In its spot were numerous perfectly bundled stacks of corn, soybeans, and wheat. They were radiant, nearly a manufactured perfection. Large ears, vibrant colors, a sweet aroma. All the piles were like this, and they would be for every day to come, as long as we left something in exchange. Story 10. Please way back. I'm not a writer. This isn't for a book or a blog. This is a warning. And if you're reading this, it means you might need it. And it starts on a stretch of road you don't take at night, the one that snakes through the old forest. Outsiders have been going missing on that stretch of road. And worse, I'm convinced the locals have something to do with it. But I know now. I know what happens to anyone that does not wave. I moved into this cozy little apartment a short while ago. I never planned on staying long. My professor asked me to study the area for scientifically interesting flora. Botany PhD stuff. I'd done a few rounds in the area, but nothing struck me as interesting. The only place I hadn't been to yet was the forested road to the north. The locals seemed oddly eager for me to go there. A nice place to get lost in nature. They told me, promised me I'd find all kinds of things worth studying. But their smiles felt too wide, their insistence too strong. But I tricked myself into thinking it was just a small town thing, and I very well couldn't go back with half a report. So, at first light, I packed the car and drove up. I can't say I noticed anything unusual. The wind in the trees, birds were singing, a squirrel hopped from branch to branch. I didn't really know what I was expecting. I gathered my equipment and began a survey of the area, collecting specimens, taking photos, scribbling notes, etc. I had just finished my last collection when I noticed that the daylight was quickly vanishing. Had I really been out here that long? I glanced at my wrist, but my watch had clearly stopped. I took out my phone, but it was dead. I lied to myself. Oh, my watch has been on its way out for weeks, and my phone always drains quickly when I take pictures. Nothing felt right. I started walking back to my car. That's when I saw it. A sign. It was a weather-beaten wooden diamond. The paint. A faded, sickly yellow that was peeling at the corners. It didn't stand out. If anything, it seemed to sink into the gloom, almost like it wasn't meant to be noticed. On it was a black silhouette with what appeared to be two small children, holding hands and waving. Beneath it, half hidden by grime, was a simple yet strange message. Waving children. Please wave back. I began to smile at the absurdity of it. Who puts up a sign like that? But my amusement quickly faded. Not far behind this strange little sign were two small figures standing at the edge of the tree line. Children. They looked like children, though dressed decades out of time. The forest had fallen eerily silent. Hello, I called out. There was no response. The children reached out and held each other's hands. With their free arms, they began to wave. The shadows were long and dark now, and I couldn't make out any real details. But their faces, I swear they weren't normal faces. Where there should be eyes were instead these deep, empty voids. I stepped forward. Are you both okay? Are you hurt or lost? My throat was dry, and the words cracked as they came out. Their calm waves became more frantic, jerky, wrong, even. Their heads snapped side to side, their movement a blur. I tried to run, but my body refused. My legs were slabs of stone, my chest crushing inwards. My mind screamed run. My heart pounded in my chest like a bird thrashing in its cage. Then they started forward. Each step rattled the air with a sickening hum, like a swarm of angry bees. Tree by agonizing tree, they got closer, louder and louder. My skin prickled with icy cold sweat. The sign flashed in my mind. I had to wave. They were almost upon me. The humming had become a terrible roar. I forced my arm upwards, my joint stiff as if rusted shut. It felt too slow, too weak. I shut my eyes tight and waited for the end. But it didn't come. I dared a sliver of vision to see one of them, mid-lunge, mere feet away. Its face was a blur. My arm was raised, offering the meekest, most pathetic wave I have ever given. But it was enough. I felt the tension in the air snap. Both figures stilled and softened. Using this opportunity, I stumbled back to the road, never taking my eyes off them, always waving. I got to my car, and I fumbled for my keys and dropped them. Cursing, I blindly scrambled from across the floor, all whilst forcing my hand to keep up that pitiful wave. The sun was almost gone. Finally, I unlocked the door, bolted inside, slammed the door shut, and locked it as though the thin metal shell would protect me. My hand was relentless. I jabbed the keys in the ignition and turned, glancing back. Both creatures had moved to face me, watching, not waving. The sun dipped below the horizon with a flash of brilliant green, just as the engine roared to life. My headlights beamed, contending the darkness. But they were there. Their heads snapped towards me. The voids where their eyes should be drank the light from my car. I hit the accelerator, and the car lurched forward. In the rear view mirror, I saw them. More figures slipping from the tree line. 2, then 4, then dozens. The road ahead was the same. A procession of these childlike figures emerging from the woods. I slammed on the horn, but the sound seemed to die in the oppressive quiet of the woods. My hand was still waving, speeding. I drove 40 miles per hour, then 50, then 60, but everywhere I looked there they were, standing, watching, a never-ending line getting closer with every bend in the road. I hit the town line and braked hard. The car screeched to a halt. The children hadn't followed. Or perhaps they couldn't. My hand finally fell to my lap, limp and numb. I sobbed at the sight of the town lights. Relief that was short-lived. I drove past a diner. A waitress was frozen, mid-pour, coffee spilling over the rim of a cup. The old man she was serving pressed his face against the glass. People on the street stopped as I passed, their eyes tracking me with something. Anger? No, disappointment. I wasn't supposed to come back, and I understood. My suspicions were right from the start. I was chosen for something, and I denied it. So I drove straight through the night, stopping only when exhaustion forced me off the road. There was a brief time where I thought that I'd actually got away, but then the humming returned. It was faint at first, easy to mistake for the sounds of modern life. A car engine idling, a plane passing overhead, a dishwasher in the kitchen. But the humming grew. It became a buzz, and then the buzzing turned into a swarm inside my own skull. Louder and louder. So I waved, and it stopped. So now I can't stop waving. My arms ache and my joints throb. I'm terrified of what will happen if I stop. I don't know how long I've gone without sleep. I doubt I'll last much longer. So, if you see a sign asking you to wave at children, don't think about it. Don't hesitate. For your sake, just wave. Please, wave back. Story 11, The Fragile Lady. It was an eerie night. The pitch darkness had shattered all over the place. Since I live in a village, it doesn't feel that abnormal, but something felt unusual today. I don't know what, but my heart was pounding. I could hear my own heart racing because of the loud silence. Even little footsteps made noise. My gut feeling told me to stay alert, because even the loud and arrogant street dogs from our town did not let out a single screech of howl. I had just been out for a night walk. I personally enjoy the feeling of being all by myself, but today I didn't like it, and the flickering street lights that I walked past were engulfed in the darkness too. After listening to some pop songs, my mood went calm again. I sat at a bench nearby in the park. I know that I shouldn't have. This is the start of every horror movie, but don't blame my stupidity. I am just a casual guy who doesn't overthink too much. I sat there on a nearby bench for more than half an hour. I was just going to head back home, as it had started raining down heavily all of a sudden. The rain felt like sadness. The drops almost resembled tears. As I was running back home, trying to save myself from the rain, I saw a woman down the crosswalk. She had an umbrella. So I tried to wave my hand, but she was looking at the other side. So I shouted from the distance in the politest way possible, "Hey there! I know this might be a little strange to ask, but can you please drop me near my home if you don't mind? It is just 5 to 10 minutes away." She turned to look back at me. I don't know why, but I got a shock looking at her face. She had long black hair and a pale white face. She looked very pretty, but her eyes, looking at her eyes, felt like they were empty, devoid of light and shimmer. Although she looked kind, the shock I felt was unexplainable, just my bodily reaction of some sort. But then, thinking back at my stupid decision, I realized that she might feel scared that a man is asking her to lead him home at night, especially on this creepy and uncanny night. I realized how terrified she might feel and how bad it looks. So I was just going to say, actually, don't mind me. I will just walk it out in the rain. But she gave me a smile. It was wide but restrained, radiating politeness. She said sure, plus my home is on the way to her destination. I was very glad. I thanked her as I reached under her umbrella. We talked for a while. I explained my situation, and she was actually very understanding. As our conversation was going, I just hit a thought. Since the woman was heading in the opposite direction from mine, why did she say that my home was on the way to her destination? Just as I was trying to recover from the shock I had received and pretend to be normal so that I could think about what to do next, a second thought hit me. How does she know where my home lies? This was the final blow to my calmness. A shiver crept down my spine. I had been stunned, and as we were talking to the walk, the woman, noticing that I was stunned, finally realized she had moved past me. The raindrops poured on top of my body, just enough to bring me back to my senses. She asked me from a couple of steps down, "What are you doing there behind in the rain? You might catch a cold." I knew that I could not outrun her if she really was a supernatural entity, so I covered the distance up and continued to walk with her. Now, knowing that I am probably going to die, I actually didn't hesitate much. I have always been a little bit of a stoic believer. I knew that if death is going to come, there is no running back and that I must accept my fate. This is a natural process, and it has to happen one day or another. Although I didn't know I was going to die in a way like this, my fear had actually faded along the way. A silent smile of realization hit me. I said it was a life worth living for. The woman asked what I actually meant. I explained to her that I had already realized that she is a ghost/spirit, and that I am probably living my final moments, but that I have accepted my fate. The rain had stopped already. The woman was a little astonished herself hearing what I had said, but she actually gave me a smile, not creepy in any way, but the understanding one. She said that she is not just any kind of spirit. She only haunts bad people who have evil intentions in their mind, those who might try to take advantage of her frailness. She said in a strong and pleased voice, "You are a kind soul. It reminds me of a person that I had met a few years ago." As she said this, she handed the umbrella to me. I felt her cold and wrinkled hands. It had already stopped raining, but I just now realized it. As I looked back to thank her, she had already vanished into thin air. I felt a sense of sadness, even though my life had been spared. She looked like a nice and kind-hearted soul. I wonder how it turned out that she is the way she is now. But remembering what had just happened, and what would have happened if I was not the person I am now, but if it was someone else, I could not predict if someone else would have survived. Judging by what she said, that I resembled someone she had met years ago, clearly meaning she has not spared a soul in years, it's safe to say that the chances of my survival were very meek but never zero. At the end, I reached my home, now feeling like an eternity had passed by. Still holding the umbrella, she gave me tightly in my hands as a sign of proof that my encounter with the spirit was real. It was an experience that I could never forget, but the one thing I would like to say, which I will always remember, is that no matter what the circumstances might be, it is always better to be calm rather than hectic. After all, everybody has their own fate, and you have to do everything to overtake/ride it rather than running away from it. Smiley face.